So you have to understand, this was November 2nd was the first time that we'd been on here. I was with Roofle for less than 2 weeks. We hadn't even launched the product yet. So this was the first time that anybody really had ever heard of Roofle. I barely knew Travis. Travis barely knew me. And we were sitting here trying to, introduce the TC team and his audience about Roofle. And so it was interesting to go back and watch this and see how many pounds I have put on and how much older Travis looks today than he did 2 years ago. But it was such a huge opportunity for us to introduce the world to Roofle, because we hadn't even been to RoofCon yet. We hadn't even launched the product. And here we are on a podcast talking about it with you guys. It was truly a really an amazing experience for us. And not the least of which, I was less than 2 weeks removed from my the end of my career at GAF. And Ty was hounding me the whole time to get some kind of inside, what really happened. Why don't you tell us the truth, Mike?
What's the catch, bro? Is GAF back in Roofle? Give us the dirt on that shit, bro.
It's really the first podcast that I'd have really ever done, certainly in that kind of a capacity.
So my reaction was, man, I was excited because, we had barely just launched the product, or we were about to launch the product. We were still in beta. And I had TC Backer asking me and Mike, who I barely even knew, he was brand new, fresh employee, to come onto his podcast. And I've never done a podcast before. This is actually my first one I'd ever done. And so I'm like, okay, sweet. Now we really made it. We made it big time. We're in this space. We have this technology. We're getting invited to podcasts. This is super exciting. So, super excited to be a part of the show, and to be able to do that was really kind of our start, really where we got our start, to be able to even introduce the product. And of course, I was never going to say no. I mean, my first podcast, to be able to be on and talk about, us, the product, meet TC for the first time as we were going to RoofCon. So it was super, super excited for me to be able to be on the podcast. My impression before I came on the show was, TC is this big shot. He's got all the studio equipment. He's got all these big things. He's this big podcast guy, So I'm like, okay, going into this podcast, I'm like, this guy's going to be, hit me with all the hard questions and get on there. And man, he's the nicest guy in the world. He's just the big soft teddy bear, and he's anything further from my first envision as far as coming on the Behind the ToolBelt was so far from really what I thought he was going to be. Was that this guy's the most gentle human being that could possibly be out there. So a little scary at first, being on there, but man, nicest guy possible.
Mike, I thought he was an ass. Mm-hmm. He kept asking me the question. I kept answering it. He didn't like the answer. So we'd ask it again and again and again. And then he asked it in a different way. He was trying to get some dirt no, I'm kidding. He was fantastic. What a great host. Asking good questions, but asking it in a way that's engaging and keeping the conversation going. It's not easy to do this. And he makes it look easy and gets people to open up and talk about real issues and real things. And then, he makes you go the extra mile to make sure that the information is coming out and it's enjoyable, but thought-provoking and informational as well.
So we've actually been on the show, I think, twice or three times now, I think. I think that we are official sponsor. I think I see our logos all over there. But we actually were able to have a very special episode where we actually came into studio. We came into to Pennsylvania, and we actually drove into the studio to have an actual feel. So it wasn't even virtually. We weren't even doing it kind of virtually. We were actually in studio. I think that one for me was really extra special. And what stood out to me was, obviously Ty inviting us to come in, do the studio one, and be able to be there actually in person in studio to be able to do that event was incredible. And I think that what stands out most is that Ty's not afraid to have those conversations that some people just don't want to have. And so he's actually real within having these conversations and talking about topics that are actually real, that people actually want to hear about and what people actually want to discuss. No one wants to hear all the fluff all the time, and they want to have real conversations with people and actually talk about relatable things that are actually going on in the industry, or things that are happening, or just things that are happening personally within my life or his life, or whatever things that are going on. Is that I think it's a very, very special show that you don't get to see anywhere else in this industry.
One of the things that I think of now, knowing what I know now 2 years into this and seeing Ty in multiple different contexts is, and this is something that he has in common with a mutual friend of ours, Ben Machaka, who before he passed away, he and I used to get together on a fairly regular basis, and he was getting to be more and more well known in the industry, and he was really making a name for himself, and just a very genuine, very nice guy, but super sharp. And I'll always remember this conversation because I said, there are certain people who transcend the industry, and I encouraged Benny to transcend the industry, because there's no place that he could be that he didn't feel welcomed or he didn't belong. And I think that was a legacy that Benny had, and he left on the roofing industry. And I totally feel like that's Ty. He can be the number of different places and different people that I have been with him and seen him with. He is welcome wherever he comes. He truly transcends the industry. And I think that's a true testament. And certainly when he won the award at RoofCon as in Benny's memory, I mean, it couldn't have gone to a better candidate. Ty has proven himself to be one of those guys that truly transcends the roofing industry.
He's a friend now. He's a really good friend. He's a person I talk to on a somewhat regular basis, to where now I have this tight friendship, with TC. And I'll tell you what, when he's not in an event and he's not in a show, I get sad, because every time I go to a show, an event, I want to be on a show. I want to have conversation with him. And even if I don't get to go on a live stream or whatever, but still get to be able to have those conversations with a good friend, it feels like family. Whenever the whole Behind the ToolBelt family shows up to an event, they are absolutely there as a family, as a part of it. And if he's not there, I feel like we're all missing a part of ourselves with not having Behind the ToolBelt at those events. Ty, this message is for you. Keep doing what you're doing. You are making a huge impact on the industry today. Like I've said, if you're not at an event, you're not at a show, you're not there, Behind the ToolBelt guys are not there, this event is never complete without the Behind the ToolBelt there. It is a part of all the events, what you've started, and you can see now with all the people that are now copying you at these events, doing what you're doing, is that you are doing something special within the industry, and the industry is now so much better for what you're doing, what you have done, and it does not go unrecognized. I recognize it, and I truly believe you as one of my really, really good friends that keep doing what you're doing. Love what you're doing. Stick with it. Appreciate you.
Ty, what a great legacy you're leaving. We're just beginning, right? And so I'm very excited to be part of your inner circle. You're creating a whole lot of waves in an entire generation of roofing companies that are more professional. They're more kind to each other. They're collaborating together. They're learning together. You're such a huge part of this. Your efforts in Behind the ToolBelt are not unrecognized. We all see it. We appreciate it. We appreciate you. Congratulations on 5 years.